I'm your host, Riri. Welcome to Reimagining Life, From Pain to Purpose, where you'll find a community focused on resilience and perseverance, sharing untold stories of hope and rebuilding while dealing with major life interruption. This podcast is made by and for people in the process of reimagining their lives. We're here to raise the voices of those who often suffer in silence, living with chronic pain and/or disability. This space is for you. We encourage you to get involved. So stick around and let's jump right into the next episode. Welcome to episode 21, where we'll learn about journalism through the lens of a journalist with multiple disabilities. Cara is a journalist with experience both inside and outside newsrooms at multiple networks, as well as a disability advocate. Cara's story allows us to get a small preview of what it's like growing up with a physical disability and trying to find one's footing as an adult. Cara is also the founder and director of the Disabled Journalists Association. She's a powerhouse, driven by her values and goals to end ableism and provide the support to other disabled journalists that she wished she'd had. Cara's work includes advocacy, rallying for policy change, and entrepreneurial pursuits. Cara spent 10 years of her career at CNN producing documentaries as well as writing for various verticals, including Edocracy and CNN Business. In 2019, she produced Dwarfism and Me for The Guardian, which was an exploration of the treatment of dwarfs in American society. She has spent the last 4 years studying disability and its coverage in the media. As part of her work, she trains newsrooms to tell more robust and investigative stories about disability. In addition to her work in the journalism industry, she also works in narrative change in the film and TV industry and is a member of the TV Academy Diversity Committee. Her latest short documentary about the life of Brad Lomax, Black Panther and disability rights activist, is featured on PBS.com. Let's jump right into our conversation. Can you please tell us who you are and what makes you a reimaginer?
My name's Cara Reedy. I'm the director of the Disabled Journalists Association. And I've been disabled my whole life. I have dwarfism, but I also have ADHD. And now I have a new one called arthritis.
Oh, boy.
And I would consider myself a reimaginer. I spent a lot of time in newsrooms, and which were not built for me in any kind of way, emotionally, physically, anything. And so over the last 4 or 5 years, I've changed the way I think for myself. I think of myself as a journalist, and realizing that I don't have to work in journalism in newsrooms. And that doesn't make me revolutionary because there's tons of disabled freelancers, but it's thinking about how do we create supports, the support that a newsroom does give, mentorship and a safety net, a place where you can get resources to do your work. How do I do that for disabled people without the really ableist systems of a newsroom? The stuff that crushes you, the stuff that makes it impossible for disabled people to work in newsrooms. How do I get rid of that stuff, but keep all the good stuff and the supports so that disabled stories can be told, so that disabled people can tell stories that are about disability or not about disability, but have a different perspective because your life brings you different perspectives, which means you ask different questions based on who you are. That's just how you see the world. And so how do I create those supports for those people so that in general, the world gets a better understanding of how the world works? Because disabled people, although we're the largest minority in the world, we're mostly unheard.
Yeah, that's so great. Can you tell us a little bit, for example, what makes it so hard to work in a newsroom?
The pace is brutal. And understand the pace is so brutal, it disables people. So people might walk into these newsrooms with no disability and leave with all kinds of disabilities. So, but if you come into that situation with a disability, it's going to affect your well-being. You are not going to have the best outcomes. So it's pace, but also people are just people, right? So people think that when journalists walk through these newsrooms, they're either the evil or they're the best shining examples of they're fighting the good fight and all that other stuff. And honestly, journalists are just journalists. They're just people that are doing a job, and they come in there with all their bigotry and their prejudice. And that's just the reality of them. And so we live in an ableist society. We're everything about and it's not just America, but we live in an ableist world. So why wouldn't newsrooms be ableist? Why wouldn't they be magnifying that?
Oh, absolutely.
They're going to be that's all they know. So that creates a very toxic space for disabled people to work, to function. Asking for accommodations is hard because there's always some suspicion that you're getting over. Let me just say this. I think there are a lot of smaller outlets now that are trying to change this, but the vast majority, the industry just functions this way.
So thank you for giving us that background for those of us who are not journalists. I'd like to ask you a little bit about your own disability. And so what kind of limitations or challenges did this cause you in your life? And how has it impacted you throughout your life? And how did you learn to live and thrive with it?
The limitations that happened in my life were not based on my disability. They were based on what society felt about my disability, which I always think is funny. The wider world has this image of disabled people as very emotional. And that's because we've taken so many hits for so many years that at some point, the amount that we've taken, when you get a little taste of our anger, it's not even like close to what we're feeling. Like you're not even experiencing anything. This is just a little blip, but it's just bigotry from the time I was really little. And because I'm a dwarf, my body is different and there's not that many of us. And so we are in fairy tales as these mystical, magical beings. And so the first introduction to us is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So then a 3-year-old is going outside to just be a 3-year-old, and I'm being pointed at and made fun of. And like, it's not just the kids, the adults do it too. As a 3-year-old, I'm being verbally assaulted by adults. And like, no one wants to. My earliest memory of this is we were at a fair, and the area where I grew up was pretty cool. I was pretty safe from.
Okay.
There were glimpses. And so we went to this fair, and my uncle and aunt were there and my whole family. And we were just walking around the fair. And somebody said, I don't remember that part. The only thing I remember is my uncle. I knew it was about me, though. My uncle reared up and almost got into a physical altercation with another adult because an adult had said something foul at me. 3. So I never really had a problem with my physical self.
Yeah.
I didn't come with a lot of complications. My body didn't come with there's a lot of complications dwarfism can give you.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any when I was younger. I had like ear infections. That was the biggest thing. I didn't have any mobility issues. I didn't have anything that would slow me down. But even if I did, I don't think that would be the major thing that was limiting me. It was that. How do you build self-esteem when you're confronted with that? So yeah, I feel like was my limitation, was trying to build self-esteem and a healthy attitude about myself when you go outside and the whole world is telling you not allowed to have that. You're a joke and we will treat you as such. And am I very tough, right? Am I very tough? I am very tough.
Yeah, you had to be.
Had to be. From the time my brother, who has passed away 3 years ago, he was a big football player, a sports guy. and he was big. so, so my parents had like one of each. And I remember multiple times he would tell people who were coming for me, he'd be like, don't do it. You're going to get your feelings hurt. And because she's the mean one. I often was. I mean, like, but I think it's horrible because these traits and these survival mechanisms come from scars and wounds, but
Yeah.
how do you utilize it without hurting yourself?
Yeah. It's such a struggle, I'm sure. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know that's not something that's easy to talk about.
No. But you know what? It's even when I was at well, I'm not supposed to say where I was, but it doesn't matter.
At a certain news place.
Certain news network. I remember thinking, okay, well, you gotta just buck up and not take it, but persevere. Because I didn't take it. They were often very angry at me at that network because someone would say something and then I would say something back. And I didn't have the status in that room to be allowed to say something back. But I did anyway. So
yeah,
I was labeled difficult.
You were defending yourself.
But their idea was, I don't have the right to. And it depended, and I will say this. There were periods of time there that I had bosses who thought it was okay for me to defend myself and protected me. So, which was good because then there were periods of time while I was there that even though it wasn't newsroom changed, but I could be safe to at least take on the attacks the way I would on the street. On the street, there's no rules. I can do,
right.
You say something to me, I can say something back. And one reason why I miss New York so much, because if someone would say something foul, especially when I was in my old neighborhood, and then I'd say something back, if the person tried to say anything, my neighbors would be like, nah, you're wrong. But not even just my neighbors. It's like New Yorkers have a very intense sense of justice. I guess because it's such a big city and there's so many people that like there are potential for fights to break out. And like, how do you navigate that? Well, it's when people take sides and put the weight of the people in front of the offensive party. So there were really crowded subway trains in the morning sometimes when I lived in Brooklyn, coming from Brooklyn to, and I would it was always late because I'm always late, but I would try to get on trains and they were too crowded. And so then there would be one that I would just have to get on. And I'd try and hold on by a pole by the door because at least I could like hold some space rather than like deeper into the car. And people would just put their arms like over my head. So then I couldn't see the roof. It was just people. And which is super scary.
Yeah.
And when I was coming from my neighborhood and that would happen, some man would always reach up and no, she's down here. So I never felt like I wasn't really ever scared there because there was always seemed to be like this sense of justice in a weird way.
So it sounds like you had some sense of community there.
I did. I understood how it functioned. The way New York City functions is comfortable to me. There's power in numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. Were there any organizations or, I don't know, special places where you felt really supported other than, when you were an adult living in New York City with that sort of community?
No. I always had friends.
Yeah.
And groups of friends. But did I have like an organized organization that was protective? No.
Okay.
My parents moved. So St. Louis, sorry, let me start over that's my ADHD starting. It's like 3 sentences start and you're like, no, pick a sentence. St. Louis is not known to be the most racially integrated or safe for Black people. Let's just.
Yeah.
So my parents chose to live in this neighborhood that was Black and Jewish. And it was a Jewish neighborhood that then opened up the schools and everything to the city kids and was like, you should come experience this school. And so then Black people started moving into the neighborhood. And so by the 70s and 80s, we were totally mixed and integrated. And there were pockets where there were all Black or all white. That all went away too. So it was a nice place to live. And so because of that, I didn't feel unsafe as a small child. Because that incident at the fair that I'm talking about was in my neighborhood. And even though my uncle's the one that showed up, that really wasn't tolerated in that area. That's why I was so like, what's happening? So, and I went to like a hippie preschool. Like they were full on hippies. That was comfortable with me. And I think the reason why I like New York is because that little neighborhood I grew up in was Jewish. And a lot of the kids that I grew up with were also moving to New York.
Interesting.
So it was this very sort of, they either moved to New York or they moved to LA. So because there's a lot of kids that were in music and theater, it was a very arty-farty, hippy-dippy place to be. But very Black and very Jewish. So New York felt comfortable to me. So I felt safe that way. When my parents switched me over to Catholic grade school, then things got kind of brutal, but boy.
Okay. So let me ask you, this is the big question, but how do you think growing up the way you did has taught you to handle the challenges that you face in your career and growing up to being a successful adult?
I grew up in the era of like Free to Be You and Me, where we got to talk about our emotions and stuff like that. And my mom was a therapist. So, and my parents also grew up during the civil rights movement. So they just arm you in a very different way. I also grew up around Holocaust survivors.
Wow.
I remember the first time I saw numbers tattooed on an arm. It was very early. And I remember going home being like, why were there numbers? Because it was an old lady. Why is this old lady got numbers tattooed on her arm? And I didn't say it in front because I had manners. Got in the car and I was like, why does she have numbers tattooed on her arm? And my mom, and had to explain the Holocaust. And then, so I think when you grow up in an area that I'm old, so the Holocaust was only 30 years before I was born. It's not that long ago.
You're not old.
It's
recent history.
Recent history, and these people I was living with them. Yeah. That's a level of trauma, but that's also how they teach you and how they teach you to be in the world. So I had parents that grew up during the civil rights movement. I had neighbors and teachers that grew up during the Holocaust who watched their people be burned and gassed. You do come up, and then for them to, in the late 50s, and I'm not saying it was perfect because I know that there were some Black people that struggled early on coming here to this neighborhood. But the fact that they were like, no, let's change this. Let's have our kids go to school with these kids. It was an option. It wasn't a requirement. And then what it turned into by the time I was there, you grow up, all of this ends up being in you and it's not because they were preaching to us or whatever. It's just the way they taught us to be humans. You're raised by your community. And so I think that it was just a really neat place to grow up. And that's how I learned to be this. And that's how I learned how to be successful, because the demands in newsrooms are really a lot, and no one wanted me there. It wasn't like when they're excited for you to be in a newsroom, you get promoted really quickly. Things happen for you. They open up the gates and they'll say, no, it's not. It's merit. It's not merit. I'm not saying it's never merit.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that are very successful in newsrooms who, if they weren't being propped up by the system, shouldn't be. So I was taught how to navigate around that stuff. and still get what I wanted. I always knew I was never going to be, early on, they told me, they were really like, you're never going to get promoted.
Wow.
And so I lived for years knowing I was never going to be promoted. They were never going to call me a journalist. So what, and like I was messed up by that. So like,
I'm sure.
don't understand that I wasn't a fully rational, normal person during this process. I probably had some reactions that weren't in control.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of pressure happening. And what I did was how many credits can I get? How many credits can I get? How many bylines can I get? And it may take me 8 years to collect the amount of bylines to get a junior position.
So it sounds to me like you learned extreme perseverance, resiliency. I mean, the way you handled problems and just continued on is ingrained in you.
It is. I'm also super privileged. I was lucky enough to be born in a family where both parents had master's degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And then they didn't get their PhDs, but they continued learning and going and adding to their knowledge and teaching. And like, so I grew up in an environment where reading and learning and experiences were valued. So I was lucky. And they had the means to send me to good schools and have benefits and go on trips and do a year abroad, like do all of the things. It's funny because there was a lot of assumptions in newsrooms that I was not privileged in that way. And so which it's bigotry in so many different ways. You see a Black person, so you assume they don't, and they're in a lower position. So the assumption is that they didn't go to college. And so you treat them a certain ways. That's crappy times too, because why are you treating a person that because they have less education than you? One.
Yeah.
Two, why are you making assumptions about my education?
Absolutely.
Like all of it. Like it's doubly awful. So, I mean, I had people walk up to me when I would write things and they would say things like, this is like a miracle. So this is just a talent that's just happened.
Oh my God.
And I was like, what do you mean it's a miracle? Well, for you to come out and write this thing straight out of the gate that's so great, that's just kind of a gift. They were trying to be nice, but that's not nice. And I was like, and this is why I got in trouble all the time, because I'd be like, there
are a lot of assumptions.
Did you think I didn't go to college?
Yeah, or that you didn't work your butt off to get where you were.
Right. Because I'm the only one that looks like me here. So if I'm here, what do you think happened? How do you think I got here? It's not from the benevolence of all of you. It's because I've been clawing my way slowly while you guys are taking the elevator. I'm on the side with bloody knuckles while you guys are going to get cocktails. I don't know what's happening. And so I would give some smart ass reaction to it. Well, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. I get it. So how did you become a journalist? And I hear you saying that's a loaded word.
Actually, this is a good story because I had no interest in journalism. I never thought about it as a career. I didn't go to school for it. My brother actually started. That's what he started in college. And I was like, that sounds boring. I remember thinking that too. I was like, why would you choose that? Because I was a theater major with a double major, theater and political science. I had no interest. I wanted to go dance and be on stage because ultimately I'm a ham. But like, that's what I wanted. But so I realized in college that probably wasn't going to work because they wouldn't give me any parts. I think I was in one show my whole 4 years in college. Things happened. So I said, okay. And so kind of went through like a midlife crisis at 21 because I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? I don't have any other ideas. So I jobbed around and I finished school before I graduated. So I took an extra summer to graduate. So I didn't walk until the middle of the year. And my grandmother, because I don't know what I was doing. I think I was sleeping mostly and kind of getting a job, but kind of not. And so at my graduation, because this is how tough my family is, at my graduation, my grandma was like, this is great. Also, you have no direction. So you're going to come live with me and work with me and get some direction. And so I moved to Lincoln, Nebraska and lived there for 6 months and found some direction really quickly because I didn't want to live in Lincoln and had a good, I'm like so glad that I spent that time with my grandmother because I got to live with her and we developed a relationship that, not that I wasn't close with my grandma, but it was a deeper relationship after that. So anyway, I found a calling and it was photography, which also like, why not pick something that makes money? And so I went to art school because what do you do when you don't have the skills to go back to school? Went to art school, got abused there, graduated though. And my friend, my roommate from college the first time said, hey, I'm living in New York. You've always wanted to live in New York. My roommate's moving out. Move here. So I moved there, but it was right after 9/11 and it wasn't a good time to move there. And there were no jobs. And so I sat around and my mom was like, you have 1 month and then you got to move home because we're not paying for a New York lifestyle for you. I was like, oh God. And because I couldn't find anything, there was nothing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I wasn't trying. I couldn't get it. So my mother ended up coming in and saving it. And there was a woman that they were pre-K counseling in Catholic school, like Catholic religion. And she was like, oh, I live in New York and I'm over the temp agency that supplies all the temps to Time Warner. So Time Warner was, CNN, HBO, all of that.
Wow.
Time Make magazines before they died. But so that's how I got into Time Warner. And but I worked at the music labels for a while. And then I'm going to get to how I got, don't worry, I'm landing the plane soon. So, but I feel like this needs to be said because it's so circuitous.
Yeah.
I ended up in some department called benefits finance where I did spreadsheets all day. And I'm not good at math. My other dad, who just passed away, I came to visit them in Cleveland and he was like, where do you work? And I said, benefits finance. He goes, do they know you don't know how to do math? No. So anyway, I worked there for a couple of years and I actually went permanent. And I knew if I went permanent there, I could transfer in a year to anywhere I wanted to, any open job. So we were in the cafeteria, like we had a communal cafeteria. So there was this lady that I used to hang out with. I never knew her name. And we used to just walk around and look at the different food and talk about whether we were going to get fat from it. So anyway, one day I was on the 104 bus going home and she was on the bus too. And she comes up, she goes, I don't even know where you work. Like we talked to each other in the cafeteria. I don't know where you work. And I said, oh, I'm at Time Warner Corporate and Benefits Finance. And she said, and I said, where do you work? She said, CNN. And I had actually just applied for a job at CNN, an assistant to the facilities manager. I just was trying to get out. And I told her and she said, oh, that job's gone. She said, I know that job. It's gone. And I said, oh. And she said, but next time you see a job you like, just call me. And she's like, here's my extension. I was like, great. So literally like a week later, the job assistant to the anchors on the morning show came up. And I called Arlene and I was like, her name's Arlene. I called Arlene. I was like, yo, here's this job. And she said, send me the resume. I know that job. Send it to me. Sent it to her. And I got an interview the next week.
Wow.
And that's how I ended up at CNN. And I got there and was, well, what is this? I didn't know. And again, I wasn't interested in journalism. But once I got there, I was like, this is actually pretty cool. And it really fits with my ADHD because everyone's moving and it's quick deadlines and there's never any stopping. I'm like, this is for me. And so 6 months after I started on the morning show, 6 months to a year, I can't really remember, we moved to the documentary unit And then we got there and I was like, oh, this is even better. And that's kind of how I fell into it. And so while I was there, I just started picking up skills. I would say, can I go track this with you instead of you getting the PA to do it? And so I would go track. So I learned how to do all of the jobs everybody else did sort of on the fly. And I marketed it as, hey, I can make your life easier. Instead of you looking for a PA, you can just be like, hey, Cara, let's go to the tracking booth. So I got to learn all this stuff. I learned how to field produce. Yeah. Just by being an extra body and learning how to do it. Because people would be like, well, does she know? And they're like, she knows how to do it. Just let her do it. We've taught her all of it. The photojournalists, which were mostly guys. There's a few women, but it's mostly guys. They really helped me quite a bit. They were a great help.
That's great.
Gaining skills. So that's how I became a journalist. It was really just, I walked into the door and was like, what's this about? Oh, this is kind of cool. Okay, I'll do this. No particular, when I was a kid, I'm like, I'm going to be a journalist. All accident.
People come to things in different ways.
They do.
So obviously, since then, you've been pretty dedicated in your field and working a lot. I'd love for you to tell us about DJA. Give us a little bit of the history and what are the goals? What is it?
Yeah. So that question you asked, what were the groups that helped? Were there any groups that helped me? No. So when I was in the journalism newsrooms and in the field, I had nowhere to go, to talk about these issues I was having with being disabled. I went to the National Association of Black Journalists and they didn't get it. And this is I was going to say it's no shade. It is shade. There was a real misunderstanding of what it's like to be Black and disabled in spaces. And many weren't welcoming. I'll say that. It wasn't that they were unwelcoming. It was like they just couldn't fathom that my issues couldn't be my fault because they were succeeding. I mean, I had people tell me, well, you're not hustling enough. And I was like, okay, no. So after CNN, I took years off because I was worn out and mentally not well. And during the pandemic, no, it was right before the pandemic, and the pandemic's still happening, but right before it started, I decided to do, I'd left CNN, I jobbed around NPR, and I've said CNN through this whole thing. Oh, well. Come to me. So I did a gig at NPR. I kind of jobbed around, but was still not very comfortable. And I was doing a piece at NBC, a little short piece, after I did a documentary for The Guardian. And I was like, let me interview a couple of disability experts on, I can't even remember what the topic was. But one of the people I interviewed was Lawrence Carter Long. And we kind of chatted. And then about 2 weeks later, he emailed me and said, I think I have a job for you. And I was like, okay. And he said, I'll get back to you in a couple days. And then a couple days, he was like, oh, Judy Heumann wants to talk to you. The job is with Judy Heumann. She wants to meet with you. I was like, this is crazy. How does she even know I exist? So I went through 2 grueling interviews with her and other people. It was like a team, 2 teams. And she had written a white paper about how the media covered disability, talked about it, not just in journalism, but film and TV and advertising. And she was trying to figure out a way to change that ecosystem. And so I got the job after the 2 interviews. And then the first day we go to meet and she says, so how are you going to change the industry?
No pressure.
I said, well, she's like, what's the plan? And I said, well, can you give me 2 weeks to come up with some plans? And she said, yeah, I can give you 2 weeks. So I came up with a list of 10 ideas. And one of them was what I needed, which was a Disabled Journalists Association. And so once I came up with the 10 ideas, we went to Ford Foundation to see if we could get some funding for one of them. And I started listing off the ideas. And then I came to Disabled Journalists Association. They're like, that's the one. So it was Farai Chedaya. Was a journalist. She's a journalist as well. I remember because it was just the two of us in a Zoom call. They were like, yep, I can support that. And so that's how it started. And Farai was great because when they first gave us the money, I was like, okay, because they met with me and they were like, well, what are you thinking about doing with the money? And I was like, well, I've come up with 10 things that we have to do. And Farai was, relax. And I was like, what? She said, why don't you do some research? You don't have to do anything right now. Take this time to figure out how to build this thing. And it was such a relief because I was like, I was just coming up with stuff and didn't know if it was going to work and I was going to start throwing stuff up. But having that time to do the research I taught in newsrooms. I taught how to cover disability. I studied disability too, like as a subject matter, statistics, and talking to disabled journalists. Like I spent a lot of time just talking to people and reading. And it has made all the difference, I think. So now we're in a place where we're actually activating. We've had our first meeting, which went really well, and people showed up.
That's great.
And there was a sense of community that I could see that was starting to form. And people got to tell us what they needed. Practical, not just support, because we know that.
Right.
But like practical things, like we need this. Like we don't have the knowledge to do this. All the things that other people get because they get them in newsrooms, the mentorship, the how to do things. I don't have enough money to pay for, access to an app that I need to do the research, to do the work. How do I fill in those gaps for everyone? And so it was a good meeting, and I knew some of the stuff, and it confirmed some things plans that we were thinking of activating, but it also gave us new places to support. It was exciting. I'm excited to be able to support everyone.
That's fantastic.
There's that adage, be the person that you needed. And it's kind of nice being able to be that person. It's a little healing for me, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I've got wounds all over the place. And I know if I had someone where you could just complain, the person understands and validates that, but then also says to you, how do we work through it? People are like, oh, that's great. You're telling people to work harder. I'm not at all. How do we strategize to get people through whatever process they need to get ahead? It doesn't mean I'm pressuring people to work harder. It's how do we manipulate the system so you don't get harmed and you still get what you need?
Yeah. You're giving would have wanted.
Yes.
That's pretty amazing. Wow. So how long has DJA been alive?
We got our first grant in 2020, end of 2020.
Okay. So it's relatively new.
It's pretty new.
Yeah.
I've never built anything either. So this has been a real learning experience for me.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful for Farai's advice because I'm trying to be mindful of working and creating like a good foundation so that this place can survive.
Yeah.
How do we make a place that is lasting, that can survive, that will support and will change and morph as needs change? How do we build an organization that can be agile?
Yeah. So important.
It is, because accessibility is agile. You love it when people are, well, we followed the ADA.
Done.
I think back to when my dad was very tough on grades. And he'd be like, if you got a B, how much did you leave on the table?
Wow. Let's talk about the intersection of journalism and disability a little bit more. What do you think are the core issues that DJA is going to deal with the most? And what does success look like for you?
So, we've got a couple things that we're working on. One thing is to be a support system.
Mm-hmm.
And support means a couple things. It means support of disabled journalists, but it also means support where if a newsroom is being harmful, if a newsroom is publishing really ableist stuff, we say stuff. And we can say stuff because right now I'm the face of it, but that won't always be. And whoever is at the helm or front facing has to be comfortable with being able to stand up to newsrooms, because that's the point of us, is that we're not beholden to contracts with newsrooms. We're not their employees. They can't take away our benefits. That's why we exist. So support in one way, but also, and training is two sides. So training for newsrooms when they want to come and learn some things, we will train not only about how to cover disability better, but that is part of it. Because a lot of newsrooms think that we come and we're just going to be nice to disabled people. And like, that's not what we do. We teach actual, like, how do you cover disability? How do you cover it? What questions are you not asking that you should be asking? But while we're doing that, also talking about newsroom culture and how they could be actively harming people that are their colleagues. So that's one side of training. And the other side is making sure that we fill in the gaps of training for disabled people, because it's harder for us to get that training. It's harder for us to have access to things. And so how do we fill in that gap? There's a lot of newsrooms that are like, we'd love to teach disabled people how to act in our newsroom. I'm like, nobody needs that. Nobody needs that. Well, we can teach them the rules and the laws of, no one needs that. You're still a student. So we fill in that gap. And then also the third thing is there's no better way to teach how to do better journalism than to do it yourself.
Yeah.
So we're hiring journalists as we can get projects funded to work on different projects around disability that we know newsrooms won't do. And if they do them, they won't do them in the way that we can do them. So because we need to not only change newsrooms, but we need to start changing the general public's perception.
Yeah.
What disability is and who is disabled. I think there's this idea that disability has a look. It doesn't. Your grandpa's disabled.
Yeah.
So is your mom, probably. You don't get to, the CDC just upped their number to 27%. You don't get to 27%.
Right.
And it's a small chunk of people. That's a large chunk of people in the United States that are disabled. That's over a quarter.
Yeah.
So the perception around disability is that it's sort of uncommon and novel, and it's none of those things. So doing work that shows the history and how this country has treated disabled people along the way.
Yeah.
How it's changed how we function as a country. It's not, everybody thinks that we're in these silos. That's what was, to me, that was what was so sad about the election. Everyone's in silos.
Yeah.
No one understands the connections between things. So people think that if you stop trans people from wanting to go to your bathroom, that won't be connected to young girls or women being subject to genital searches. Once you start these rules, a lot of people are going to get caught up in them.
Yeah.
And it's not we're not that different. So dividing us in this way, and I feel it would be real. I feel like the media really helped doing it. It was, there's a journalist in Britain named James O'Brien, and he calls it the gamification.
Yeah.
And so we're all on these, no, my team won. I was like, we're all on the same team.
Yeah.
We're all going to die on this rock together. You didn't win anything. You won nothing. You didn't win anything. And what people will be like, well, the Democrats, you know what? The Democrats, the Republicans, all of them, all of them, and the media too, all created this. And no one wants to admit that this mess is us.
Yeah.
It's sad. But I feel like that's something we're going to try and work around too.
That's actually what I was going to ask you next. In our current political climate, which is hardly friendly to news or disability, what do you think the role of DJA will be, and how will you do it over the upcoming months and after?
Well, we're working on some projects.
Yeah.
We have one that's on the road and one that is in pre-production. But there's never been really any in-depth reporting around disability. I don't mean that people haven't reported on disability, but there's never been focus where we're just like, we're going to focus on this. And so that's what we're going to do, was we're just going to focus on, we're going to take the time to focus on the roots of problems that are affecting disabled people rather than the one-offs at court cases or the one-offs after someone has died. We're going to, and it's not even like investigating one nursing home. It's like, let's investigate the entire nursing home industry.
Right.
Who's getting money from it? What are the roots of these issues? Why are we here? So that's what we're going to work on, is telling those stories, because I find that most people just don't know.
Yeah, it's so important.
Most people don't understand that our entire attitude around disabled people is affecting everything that we do. It's affecting you. It's affecting, because people are like, well, I'm able-bodied. I'm like, for how long? For how long are you going to be that way? Because the way we've set up this world, you will be disabled. Because that's how this works. Because this is a system. It's not an individual thing. It's a system that's broken. And so until we have that conversation for real, the system's going to continue to be broken. And so that's why we're trying to work on systemic issue. But there's other groups that are doing it too. The Sick Times. The Sick Times is brilliant. They have taken COVID and long COVID and all of the things that I've had questions about, they're finding out, they're covering. And disabled people are always in on the cool stuff first. We already know about it, but I can't wait until the wider public catches on to them, which I hope is, and I'm not saying they don't have a good following, because they do, but I want them to be
Bigger.
Yeah. I want them to be a household name where people are like, have you read the Sick Times today?
Yeah. So much about education too. Yeah. So cool. Well, it's very exciting. I mean, from my perspective, this is so needed. And it's exciting to know that you're there working on it and not just you alone.
Yeah. I'm excited about it too. I've never had this much excitement around work. It's been great.
Yeah, that's great. So what do you think is next for you and for DJA? I mean, you have a challenge coming up.
Yeah. I think our biggest challenge is just to keep everyone safe.
Yeah.
During this time. Like, I'm not going to make any predictions about what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Because we don't know what's getting ready to happen.
Right.
And so right now we're just thinking about how we can protect ourselves, how we can protect our community.
Yeah.
That's kind of it. A lot of it, a lot of people are really worried, and I get it, but you can't be so worried that you're immobile.
So true.
Because it's coming no matter what. Whatever it is, it's coming. We don't know what's coming. We have some ideas of what's coming, but we just need to be rested.
And ready to dig in.
Be around people you love.
Yeah. So one more question. For other people who are listening and they're maybe getting excited and want to do something to help, is there a way that they can support this work or get involved themselves?
If you're a journalist or wanted to be a journalist and thought about being a journalist, reach out to us. If you want to support and you have extra cash, we will take it. Just to be, and to be honest, what we use it for is salaries, paying people. It's not, we're very transparent about what we do, whatever money we give it, we take in, we put back out in salary.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't have a building, we don't have anything, but we have some website costs. But other than that, it's if you contribute to us, you'll be hiring a journalist.
Yeah.
You'll be paying for a service so that a journalist can do their work.
Absolutely.
That's really what, that's kind of the support we need right now is.
That's good to hear. And I'm happy we can share it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the conclusion of my formal questions. Now we've come to our rapid fire 5 for 5 questions. Please answer honestly and quickly, whatever comes to mind. So the first question is, what's your favorite sound?
Oh, baby giggling.
That's a good one. What's your favorite word?
Oh, man. That's hard.
Just pick one.
First word that came out was Tupelo.
Ooh, it's different. Favorite guilty pleasure, or it doesn't have to be guilty.
Oh, this one I know. I love a British soap opera. I live with my dad now. Oh, he can't stand it.
All right. Something you've learned that you wish other people would understand.
That people are just people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And finally, what advice would you give to an 18-year-old you?
Oh, don't work within the system.
It's good advice. But that concludes. You made it through our 5 for 5. No, but those are all the questions I have for you. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
I feel like I said a lot. I'm sorry I'm so long-winded.
Through Cara's story, we learn how ableist a newsroom is, how the pace creates such a difficult working environment that it can cause able-bodied people to become disabled. Further, newsrooms magnify the ableist society that we live in, making it even more challenging for people with disabilities to survive. However, though newsrooms are brutal, they also offer journalists opportunities for training and learning on the job. Therefore, people not working in newsrooms makes journalism more manageable for people with disabilities, but it also means that disabled journalists are missing out on critical learning opportunities. Cara explains that the limitations she faced growing up weren't because of her disability, but they were because of the perceptions others had about her disability. She experienced bigotry from a very young age and remembers clearly how others did not take her seriously because of her physical appearance. As someone with a rare physical disability from birth, she found building a healthy self-esteem particularly difficult when the world around her didn't treat her with respect, especially as she felt like a joke. Traits and survival mechanisms came from scars and wounds, and she's very aware of how using them caused herself further damage. Cara reflects about how, though disability is the largest minority group in the world, as a group, it remains largely unheard and invisible. Through the Disabled Journalists Association, Cara is designing systems and tools to help arm future journalists with the necessary skills those in a newsroom may miss. In a role that encompasses both advocacy and policy, Cara is helping make journalism more accessible to everyone. She started by studying statistics about disability in the media and interviewing disabled journalists to make sure she was covering the most important issues for all. Not only do journalists with disabilities have a unique, often unheard perspective, but they're also better able to tell these stories authentically. In addition to training other journalists, Cara also holds trainings for newsrooms and media outlets about how to better and more fairly cover disabilities and other related topics. It's important to note that the association is still young in age, and Cara is hard at work dedicated to making sure she disrupts the status quo of how people with disabilities are generally portrayed and shown in the media. She's determined to ensure all of the funding that they raise goes directly to supporting journalists with disabilities, often through salaries and funding specific projects. Cara's deep drive to make her feel more inclusive and friendly to people with all different types of abilities is evident throughout our conversation. Cara is driven and inspired to lead Disabled Journalists Association to new heights, and she redefines the word journalist. Thanks for listening to Reimagining Life from Pain to Purpose. We're always interested to hear your feedback and questions. So leave a review and drop us a note at reimagininglifepodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram. We hope you'll tune in for the next episode.